My parents sold me like livestock, so I robbed my abuser and ran. In my family, tradition wasn't a set of values, it was a business model, and my sister and I were the inventory. My mother didn't raise us to be women, she raised us to be livestock, grooming us with the sole purpose of selling us to the highest bidder. My father never looked at the men he brought home as potential sons-in-law, he looked at them as investors, his eyes only lighting up when he saw the size of their bank accounts or the make of their cars. I remember the day the deal for my life was finalized. My mother sat me down and told me I was marrying a man named Malik. She knew he was a monster. She knew he had already destroyed the lives of 2 previous wives, leaving them broken and discarded, but she didn't care. The dowry he offered was enough to keep my parents in luxury for a decade, and that was all that mattered. The wedding was a funeral in disguise. I stood there in a dress that cost more than some people make in a year, feeling the weight of the fabric like a lead shroud. Malik didn't smile once. Not during the ceremony, not for the photos, and certainly not at me. He looked at me with a cold, predatory arrogance, like he had just purchased a particularly expensive piece of furniture. My parents were beaming, shaking hands and pocketing the metaphorical checks, while I felt my soul drifting away. That night, the nightmare officially began. There was no romance, no conversation, no getting to know each other. Malik walked into the room, didn't say a single word, and simply grabbed me. He forced my face into the pillow, muffling my cries, and did exactly what he wanted. I wasn't a wife, I was an outlet for his cruelty. Life in his house was a slow-motion execution of my personality. I was allowed 3 things: cleaning, cooking, and the television. That was the extent of my existence. On the first day, he took my phone. If I ever see your face on social media, or if I find out you're talking to anyone outside these walls, you won't just be sorry, you'll be unrecognizable, Malik told me, his voice a low, terrifying growl. I lived in a state of constant, vibrating fear. Every night was the same, he would force himself on me, ignoring my tears, treating my body like a battlefield. If the soup was too cold or the floor had a smudge, he wouldn't just complain, he would throw the plate at my head or backhand me across the room. I spent my days covered in bruises that I had to hide with heavy makeup, though no one ever came to visit anyway. I reached a point where the darkness felt permanent. I sat in that kitchen one afternoon, staring at a bottle of bleach, seriously considering ending it all just to make the screaming in my head stop. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. But then, a week later, the front door opened, and my younger sister, Alara, walked in. She had been sent by my parents to learn how to be a good wife from me. When we were finally alone in the kitchen, I saw the look in her eyes. It was the same hollow stare I saw in the mirror every morning. She collapsed into my arms and whispered, "They've picked one for me too." Our parents had traded her to a 56-year-old business associate of my father's. Alara was only 19. She was a child, and they were sending her to a man who was older than our father. That was the moment the fear died and was replaced by a cold, sharp rage. I looked at her and said, "Alara, we are not staying here. We are not going to let them kill us." We began to whisper in the shadows, planning the impossible. A few nights later, a massive storm rolled in. The wind was howling, and the rain was hammering against the windows so loudly that you couldn't hear yourself think. Malik had spent the evening drinking and had eventually passed out in a stupor. Alara was staying the night because the weather was too dangerous for her to drive home. This was our only window. At 5 a.m., while the world was still gray and drowned in rain, we moved. I didn't pack clothes, I packed survival. I went to the safe Malik thought I didn't know the code to. I'd watched him through the reflection in a mirror weeks prior. I emptied every cent of cash he had. I grabbed the heavy gold jewelry and the diamond sets that had been gifts at the wedding, my payment for the blood he had spilled. We crept out of the house into the freezing storm, the rain soaking us to the bone in seconds. We didn't care. We drove my car, which I hadn't been allowed to touch in months, until we reached the outskirts of a massive, sprawling city hundreds of miles away. We sold the car for cash, sold the jewelry at various shops that didn't ask too many questions, and disappeared into the concrete jungle. We changed our names. We rented a tiny, cramped apartment where the heater barely worked, but to us, it felt like a palace because the door had a lock that only we controlled. We found work at a busy restaurant, scrubbing floors and clearing tables. It was exhausting, but every dollar we earned was ours. For the first time in our lives, we weren't property. Elara began to bloom. She met a kind man, a cook at a nearby bistro, and for the first time I saw her smile, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. But the past is a persistent hunter. One afternoon, while I was prepping tables for the dinner rush, I looked up and felt my heart drop into my stomach. Standing by the entrance was our cousin, Camille. He had always been my father's loyal dog, a man who believed women were born to be quiet and obedient. He stared at me with pure venom, his voice loud enough for the whole staff to hear. "You think you can just leave?" Camille spat, stepping toward me. "You are a disgrace. You betrayed your blood, you betrayed your husband, and you are the ultimate shame of our family. Everyone back home is laughing at us because of you two sluts." The old me would have caked in fear. The old me would have begged for forgiveness. But the woman who survived Malik didn't have any fear left. I walked right up to him, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "The only shame in our family is the fact that our parents sell their daughters like meat." Before he could react, I gathered everything I felt, the nights of pain, the bruises, the stolen years, and I spat right in his face. "Get out of my sight," I told him, my voice steady and cold. "If you or anyone else comes back, I won't use my spit next time. I'll use a kitchen knife." He was so shocked by my defiance that he actually backed away, wiped his face, and stormed out, muttering threats about honor. We knew we couldn't stay there. That same night, Elara and I packed our few belongings, quit our jobs, and moved to a completely different district. We changed our numbers again. We changed our routines. It's been a year since that day. We are still looking over our shoulders, and we still have nightmares, but we are free. My sister is happy, I am safe, and our traditional family can keep their money and their shame. They don't have us anymore, and they never will again.